Well, hello everyone. This is Thor, and as many of you are aware, Meghan and Harry put out a trailer on Netflix. There's apparently going to be a docu-series in the future. So I was going to look at what I see in Meghan's chart and see what kind of public reaction we may get from this docu-series. But also, it's a little bit suspicious because William and Kate are also visiting the United States right when this Netflix trailer happens to drop. So a lot of people think that it's a sort of diss to William and Kate, or at least designed as some sort of distraction while they're here visiting the United States. So we're going to look at the chart of Meghan Markle specifically just to see is there anything indicative in the karma that Meghan has at the moment. And I feel that it does indeed show a lot going on there. If you are all new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe. I'm going to place this up slide. Make sure you like and subscribe. Also hit the notification bell for all of the notifications when I drop new videos. I do like doing videos on the royal family, but I also do monthly predictions if you are interested in that. I practice Vedic sidereal astrology, which is different than Western tropical astrology. So you want to make sure you're going to the appropriate calculators when you calculate these charts. If you're interested in a private reading, check for details down below. And for the holidays, I have a special discount. So just check out my website and you can see if you can book a reading with me or request a recorded reading. Also, before we start this presentation, I want you to know that all these statements are my astrological interpretation, and they're all alleged statements about Meghan and Harry and William and Kate. So, it's based on my interpretation. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at Meghan Markle's chart. We could do another video where we take a look at, say, Prince William's chart and see what kind of information we get on that as well. But let's take a look at Meghan because that seems to be a lot of what people are thinking about. I get a lot of requests to look at Meghan Markle's chart and get updates on that. So, of course, popular demand wins the day. All right, so let's pull up Meghan Markle's chart here. And the first thing I want you all to be aware of is I like to look at the Mahadashas and the Bhuktis, or what's known as the Vimshottari Dasha system. It's very special to Vedic astrology. So I like to check that first, even before the transits, because really Vedic astrology is all about karma and what type of karma is being highlighted in your chart for ripening. And we get that through the dasha system. So that's why it's so important to generate your chart and see what type of Mahadasha and Bhukti you're in. So the highlight here is Meghan. I was about to say Kate. Meghan's in K2 Bhukti. She's been in K2 Bhukti since July 19th, 2022. So she's started that in July 2022. I'm going to write on the chart so you guys can see. And then she's going to be in K2 Bhukti till June of 2023. So specifically June 24th, 2023. So everything that's happening in Meghan's life is being highly influenced by K2. And many of you may know that this upside down horseshoe looking symbol represents K2 in our charts. We all have K2, we all have Rahu, it's the karmic axis. In Western astrology, K2 is known as the south node of the moon. And K2 has a dissolving influence. It's known as the great beheader. So we tend to have losses or we tend to lose things because K2 is a very spiritualizing type of planet or shadow planet because it's not actually a physical planet. So we typically don't see, very strong results during K2 periods. And like I said in a lot of my videos, uh, K2 periods tend to be one of the most talked about periods when people are talking about bad experiences with Mahadashans and Bhuktis. K2 is usually a very strong culprit along with Saturn. So people usually have very negative experiences with K2. Again, the point is spiritual development. So let me clean this up. So K2 is in the seventh house. So there is this idea that there's a focus right now between now and June. There's a focus on marriage, the marriage to Harry, and there's a dissolving influence happening on that marriage, by the way. Whatever's happening right now is not strengthening the marriage. That's what I want you to be aware of. K2 tends to pull things apart. And if we look at Megan's chart, the focus is more on the self because Rahu's in the first house, Sun is in the first house. So, very much influence on the self and self image. Partners, sometimes the problem with K2 in the seventh house is partners tend to be more quote unquote expendable. Okay, as they can be used for a means of social mobility or something like that when we see that. Of course, allegedly. So K2 is going to show problems. Seventh house, believe it or not, though, it's a very public house. Okay, so when we talk about the houses and how we're judged socially, materially, we look at the first house. These are called the Kendra houses. Okay, you look at the fourth house, which represents your home. The seventh house, your marriage, your business contracts. Oops. And then you look at things like the 10th house, which represents your career. So, first house body, fourth house, seventh house marriage, 10th house career. These are all the things that society judges us at. Seventh house is also a career house. So this is really how the public sees us. The reason why I was bringing up the Kendra houses is this can show a loss of support of the public. There's a loss of the public might be getting wary of Meghan and Harry's story. There's a loss of interest happening. So we've been seeing, anecdotally, we've been seeing somewhat of a loss of interest ever since the Oprah interview. And, there's a lot of people and naysayers that are saying, that it's just going to be the same thing. We're going to hear the same thing. And maybe that's the case because I do see a lack of interest. The seventh house is a good career house because it's 10th from 10th. So a lot of times when people are recognized by the public, it's going to be during the 10th house or a seventh house period. So that is something that you want to take a look at when you notice that. So I feel like there's a loss of public interest, a loss of reputation. 10th house or 7th house represents public reputation, how the world sees us. So I see more losses happening with that. And I do feel, during this period, the marriage is still very much in flux. Okay, so despite the public presentation, I'm telling all of you that the K2 in the seventh house is showing sometimes people could have a split. Now it's really hard to make that prediction because there's a lot of karmic forces in play, but there's definitely a separative influence, like I've said in prior videos. There's a separative influence, okay? The other thing I want to bring up right now, Rahu's in the 10th house. So we do know there's this public, the public is very aware of Meghan Markle at the moment. And then also remember transiting Mars is retrograde at the moment. It's going to be retrograde in the sign. It's going backwards in the sign of Taurus until January of 2023. And then in January, it's still going to be in the sign of Taurus till March of 2023. I feel that with this transit in Meghan Markle's chart, I feel like there's a somewhat backfiring of what the public, again, public perception. This is, Mars above all, Mars can be a very disruptive planet, on a collective level and an individual level. So when it's going through the 11th house represents the masses. It represents the internet. It represents large assemblies of people. So when we think of the everyman, or we think of people like masses of people, that's the 11th house. So when Mars is going retrograde, there is this loss. There's this feeling of of loss or even anger from the public that could be happening as a result of this. Now, there is money to be made, don't get me wrong, because Mars being in the 11th house can amplify the money being made through all these business deals. But I do feel like even though Meghan may think that there's all these business deals on the horizon, I do feel like they're going to start, a lot of these business deals are going to start falling through. So there's going to be a lot of people, and it could be because of public disapproval or people getting angry. There is this idea of losses of agreements, okay, problems with business partners. Business partners, seventh house would represent if you had a deal with Netflix or if you had a deal with whatever media company. So there's definitely a loss of agreement happening. And could this be really influenced by the royal family? Possibly. We know that everything is interconnected on this planet. Now, the interesting thing about being in a K2 period, I wanted to bring this up, is they call K2 is otherwise known as a tyranny of hope. You know, there's this idea of you're hoping to ascend or you're hoping to achieve what Rahu wants during a K2 period, and then it never materializes. So there is this idea of when you're in a K2 period, you're focused on the house that Rahu's in, but you're never getting whatever Rahu's trying to get. So there is this idea of despair during a K2 period because you're never quite getting what you want. And K2 represents things that are outside of our control. So, for example, in Meghan's chart, Rahu's in the first house. So there's this idea of if she can go out there and she can get the Netflix documentary, and Harry's going to be releasing the book Spare in January. There's this idea of getting really out there in the public and being noticed by the public in a very beneficial way, because Rahu in the first house is like, look at me. Well, the actuality of what's going to happen, it's going to be where K2 is. So there's this disappointment of really not getting the social ascendance or getting the recognition that she really wants during this period. I feel that a lot of this is actually facing a lot of public disapproval. I do not feel that this is going to affect Prince William and Kate really negatively in any way. I feel like, if anything, a lot of these things are going to start negatively impacting Harry and Meghan at this point. But I think most people, when they're looking at Harry and Meghan, a lot of people have kind of blamed Meghan for a lot of things. So we'll see where this goes, but I feel that this documentary is not going to get Meghan what she wants. She's going to be very disappointed over the next 8 months with the results of the book, the documentary. There's just a sense of loss with everything and a loss of public reputation during this time as well. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate all of you and your support. Let me know what you think down below in the comments section. And I will be doing more update videos on the royal family. If you have another royal family member that you want me to do a video on, please comment down below and let me know. Until next time, thank you very much. Happy holidays, and I'll see you in the next one.